Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. My days, what is going on? Let me explain something. So, word on the street is, oh, by the way, what's good? How you doing? How's your weekend been? I hope everyone has been doing well. We're wearing the blue shirt today for the blue vector candle. It was just a random shirt color. Don't worry about it. But anyways, Trump pausing on tariffs. Like investors are like, we don't like this marketplace. 1 minute it's up, next minute it's down. Today's live stream is going to break it all down for you. Just to get you introduced to the week, we have ourselves quite an interesting week. Today, good old Trump is going to be speaking to Mr. El Salvador. He's going to have a conversation. Is he going to talk about Bitcoin? I don't know. You think he would? He'll probably say, when are you going to start buying Bitcoin? And Trump will be very careful what to say. I mean, Trump can really say whatever he wants. But the markets are in a bit of a tricky situation, guys, and investors are trying to navigate where are they going to put their money, because we've got a bit of a problem. NASDAQ and S&P are climbing up on the fact that the tariffs are going to come to a slowdown or a pause on certain products, but it doesn't mean that they're going. So then that means we're going to have still persistent issues on the longevity of where to keep your money locked in and how long for. So I'm going to break it all down for you, try and make it so you guys understand exactly what to expect and break down what we've got happening this week. We got Powell speaking, by the way. The boy, he's speaking. So with that being said, welcome. Oh, I'm going to sneeze, man. You know, if I actually did sneeze, you'd probably like... Anyways. So, S&P, just calm down, man. S&P currently trading at the highs today. Anyway, so stocks rise on tech tariff pause as the dollar weakens. Let's have a look at where the dollar's at. Well, look at gold. I mean, come on. I'm going to talk about gold. So if you're a gold trader, you might want to stick around for that one. Going into the dollar. Right now, your dollar is deemed worthless. $99. Oh, sorry, no, 99. Now, these two areas down here are previous vector candles that we usually expect the dollar to head towards. The problem that we've got is the stock market's moving up. And then, of course, your yields are in a trajectory to continue higher. This is a problem. All right. The article goes on to talk about the fact that Trump has paused import duties on a range of consumer electronics, boosting sentiment as traders brace for further volatility in the markets. Well, look, man, investors don't like what's going on. They really don't. Even the Kabasi letter says here, tariffs on semiconductor electronics imports were reduced from 145% to 20%. So the tariffs are still there. It says, meanwhile, S&P futures are up just 30 points right now. Investors have lost all confidence in this market. Question, do you guys feel like you're not as confident in investing in this market? Do I think that we're in the same sort of environment where the VIX is up and that's when you get ready to buy? And then when it's down, you get ready to sell kind of story. I mean, it's the problem that we've got is these yields right here. They are a problem for us. When the yields go up, so here's a little bit of note taking, if you will. When the yields go up, it does have an impact on the tech stocks because they are subject to changes in interest rates. Well, where are we with the interest rates? Investors still expecting, look, 79.3% and 20% on the bets. This is fluctuating so much. It's unbelievable. Usually, investors tend to stay with their understanding of where they expect the interest rates to end up. But because Trump keeps on changing the story, 1 minute he's got it in for China, next minute he's calling them out with saying that their tariffs are jokes, okay? China doesn't need the US. I mean, look, let's look at the statistics from last week, right? The US usually imports around $465 billion worth of product from China. China only imports around $145 billion worth of products from the US. So who needs who? Does the US need China? Or does China need the US? Now, logistically, you think that China needs the US because it's $465 billion that China's effectively missing out on when they're doing all this tariff stuff. So if they were going to lose trade with the US, that's quite a bit of money that they're losing out on. But these guys run the show. They are the world's factory. So if the US isn't going to deal with it, someone else will. And that's something that we've got to take into consideration. Now, with regards to the interest rates, they're expecting that the markets are going to keep it at prices of 4.25, 4.5%. So why on earth, if the expectation of interest rates is going to go stay in this range, why on earth are the yields moving up and the dollar is just taking a bleed to the downside? In my opinion, I believe that investors are seeking currency safe havens. They're not exactly going into the bonds right now. They're not interested. Why? Because the bonds are not at levels that would grant them a reason to get involved in. 3.92% is the 2-year yield. Going in the 10-year at 4.43, sorry. You've got the 30-year going in at 4.8%. These yields are not consistent with bull markets. They really aren't. Because it's showing you investors are not even interested in the US bonds. But hold on, Tino. Wait a second, bro. The NASDAQ is up 2% for the day. Yeah. The S&P is up, what? 1.6% for the day. Bitcoin, the boy, is up 1.62% for the day. So where's the money going? Well, we did say that they're going into currency havens, aren't they? So that puts the euro. Forget this little pullback. This is nothing. Then you've got the yen. And then, of course, the star of the show, gold. Now, Robert Kiyosaki is coming out with some BS again. He says the biggest financial crash is going to happen and you need to buy 3 things. That's gold, silver, and Bitcoin. All right? Now, this guy, when he talks, he looks like his face just got smacked by a bat. But I agree with him. Buy gold, buy silver, and buy Bitcoin. Bitcoin's not really giving us that flavor now, is it? Surely it should have behaved the same way as gold, but maybe they are accumulating Bitcoin because right now Bitcoin seems to be holding out very well around this 75K region itself. But just to put into perspective, guys, did you hear about this mantra token? What on earth happened there? 3.5, there we go, $5.5 billion loss in the market cap. That is wild. Did anyone hold this asset or was anybody holding this asset? Unbelievable correction. Look at that for a flip here. Now, that's a mad rug pull. Now, everyone's like saying, now, this is the equivalent of Link. I mean, $5 billion market cap leaves this asset. If that's going to ruin crypto, then you do not have stability in crypto, full stop. Now, if we start seeing an influx of assets doing this, then okay, then we've got ourselves a bit of a problem. But again, going back into the yields are going to paint the picture for you as to whether or not you should be getting involved right now. Do I think the low is in? No, I don't think the low is in, ladies and gentlemen, and I'll explain to you why. So, global stocks are lifted by this reprieve from Trump and the tech tariffs. He's still going to go ahead with the tariffs. The problem we've got is right in front of you here. Central banks are buying gold. China's probably buying gold. Look at how much activity we have had. This, unbelievable. 332 tons. Banks and other institutions are picking up gold. Goldman Sachs even turned around and said that they expect gold to end up at 4,500. Now, let me explain something. Why is it that if gold's going to go to 4,500 by 2025 or the end of 2025, why does that lead me to believe that maybe the low is not in? Stick with me on this one because this is going to help you understand why I'm coming with this logic. It's not to promote FUD or anything. It's to give you both sides of the spectrum regarding what's actually going on. So stick with me. In front of you, you've got the expectation of interest rates that are going to be had in 23 days' time. Looks like they're going to be holding the rates. So investors are betting on that logic, 4.25, 4.5%. All right? We've already had inflation going down, and we've also had the PPI index and the core price index showing that things are all right. They are reducing the cost of goods and services. Yet investors are still believing that the interest rates are going to stay the same. Okay? They're not edged towards the idea of interest rates coming down. Now, this chart right here shows you the US the price of gold relative to the real interest rates, okay? So you can see the real interest rate is the blue line and the yellow line is the futures gold price. So when you look at this, you say to yourself, well, when the real interest rate goes down, gold tends to go back up, okay? And same here, look, interest rates down, gold is going up. Right now, we're in this spot over here. And this spot over here shows us what? Shows us that you've got both gold going up and you've got real interest rates going up too, okay? So why is gold going up? It's because investors don't have anything else to do. They will not risk going into the bonds because this behavior with the tariffs is undermining the purpose of the bonds. So if you're going to start really causing a problem economically speaking, even though they are expecting the economies to slow down, world economies, and especially the US, investors are like, hold on a second, man. In times of uncertainty, we need to go over to what we know works. And that is where gold's price goes up. But if there is an expectation to cut the interest rates, gold's going to keep going up. So then that means that the low might not be in just yet. Because if investors are still seeking the safe havens, and if investors are still not going into the US bonds and they're demanding a higher rate of return, then that means assets across the board are more than likely going to depreciate. The NASDAQ itself is looking fine. It's coming away from these lows. But we've got imbalances down here that could be a bit of a problem for the NASDAQ. Now, granted, when there is a bear market, what happens? You get a big structure at the top side. It comes down, retrace, comes down, retrace, comes down, retrace, and then it stops. And then that's when you can assume that the market's getting ready to turn. If stocks were over 40% in value back in the day in December, okay, and they've now corrected nearly 25%, because if you look at the NASDAQ from the top side of this range, we've had a correction from there to about, 26%. Is 26% depreciation on assets across the board enough to grant the idea of investors stepping in now? Would you buy NVIDIA now? Let's go and have a look at NVIDIA. NVIDIA's price action shows what? Says that it's now $110 a share. Okay, that's really good. And it's going to be gapping up at the open. Happy days. But would you buy NVIDIA now? Given that you've got this massive move to the upside and all these inconsistencies of vector candles, which they will be going back into, I expect NVIDIA to go to $78. I really do. Even though Trump has paused on these consumer electronics and what have you, fine. But do I think that the impact of tariffs has come into play yet? Not at all. The Fed's all over the place with what it's going to do with the interest rates. Going into the calendar today, don't have anything to be worried about in terms of news announcements, but we have Waller speaking. Waller is predominantly deemed as a hawkish speaker, so he favors restrictive policies, okay? Going in through the week, we don't have anything to worry about other than core retail sales, and then you've got the press conference for the Bank of Canada, Powell speaking on Wednesday, and then, of course, you've got the European zone itself with their main refinancing rate. And you go over to the euro and you can see the rates that they're offering now. On Friday, it was 27%. Now it's back to 2.69%. So that effectively means reason as to why the low might not be in. There's going to be another expectation of euro's price to continue to move to the upside. If euro's price continues to move to the upside, then that means that the dollar is still going to keep on going down. Then that means that the yen is going to continue to keep on moving up. And then we've got that story about the Japanese yen interest rate. If they decide to increase their interest rates in their meeting in May, you might get yourself a very, very, very depreciated dollar. Okay? But surely Bitcoin should be coming through right now, yeah? Surely that's the case. I mean, let's just have a look at where we are with cryptocurrency. This chart right here shows you the percentage of cryptocurrencies above the 50-day moving average. Right? There's not that many that are above the 50-day moving average, okay? But what you want to do is you want to pay attention to the ones that are above the 50-day moving average, because if they start to come back up and Bitcoin does decide to keep on climbing higher, okay, then that's going to be a good sign for a lot of these altcoins that you might be holding. Now, going into Bitcoin on the daily time frame, you can see that Bitcoin is below the 50-day moving average, which is this purple line right here. I've said this to you. Unless you get a positive close, 3 daily candles closing above the 50-day moving average, which is this blue line right here. It's an EMA, all right? Be careful when you are buying Bitcoin in these ranges, because they could easily sweep Bitcoin back into these zones. Easily. Now, that's in the daily time frame. We've got a little bit of time before they can do that, unless one candle comes in and just sweeps the range to the downside, okay? So you've got to take that into consideration, that there is a possibility Bitcoin could go low, because technical analysis would say that you have got yourself lower lows. You are in what is called a downwards move, like your trend line traders. What about the death cross, Tino? I mean, look, man, it's there. It's pretty much there on the death cross. The death cross is when the 50 EMA and the 200 EMA cross over. That could imply that price action could go down lower. Going over into the Arkham ETF, you see the balance right now is 571,000. It's just playing around. We've had a few, not that many sell orders coming into play just yet, but I'm just going to quickly review this and have a look at where we are with that. Here we go. So the book has shown us not that much activity yet because the market's not really open. Oh, here we go. We just had some sell orders. Well, Wisdom Tree, actually not really a sell, but Wisdom Tree's been offloading a little bit. But overall, you can see in the last 3 days or so, we've had a little bit of interest coming out of the Bitcoin ETF in principle. Okay. Now, put it into perspective for you. Going into Bitcoin's price action today. The fact that you've got this conversation being had later on with Trump, I strongly urge you guys to forget this calendar. All right. This is not the calendar you need anymore because we've seen that the markets don't react to information anymore. They react to this calendar. This is Donald Trump's schedule. All right. So Monday, 14th of April, he's going to be meeting President greets the President of the Republic of El Salvador. And that's going to be happening at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Okay. Be careful. All Trump needs to say is, yeah, forget China, screw China. We're going to add additional tariffs elsewhere. Okay. You've got to be careful about what he says because the market's going to be listening in. What's he having the meeting with El Salvador for? Is he going to be talking about Bitcoin? You'd think. El Salvador, he's going to turn around and he's going to be saying, look, man, we're all about the Bitcoin and what have you. All we need is Trump to just say we're going to be buying Bitcoin. That's all the crypto market needs. But going back into it, do I think the low is in fully? Well, just because of the macroeconomics that are surrounding this story, I don't think so. I really don't think it's in. I mean, we've got earnings season coming up. We've got Goldman Sachs declaring their earnings at the open and another bank, M&T Bank Corporation. They're going to be declaring the opens. And given that Wells Fargo didn't really do too well, but JP Morgan did do relatively well, it means that Goldman Sachs is probably going to be up there doing well because why? They effectively handle people's money, okay? And then make a lot of their revenue on transactions that happen where investors are wanting to buy and sell products. And I don't know, man. It's just Goldman Sachs comes through today. That's going to probably lead the stock market to move up with the fact that financial companies are doing well during these times. Going into the order flow for Bitcoin, just understand where we are. In front of you, we've got this order flow suggesting that we've got quite a few people that want to sell the BTC above and around the 88,350 zone. So based on the order flow, we have seen that there's some guys adding to the book right now, going into the liquidations chart itself. We've got some interest up here at 86,650. We've got quite a few short liquidations coming into action. So that's going to be a very interesting story, to say the least, if they do decide to sweep that liquidity. But of course, because of what Trump's doing today and the fact that there's a pause on tariffs for electronic products and what have you, that's going to be welcomed by the stock market, but it's going to be short term. That's the problem that I've got. Your bond market, they're not going anywhere unless they do see the decent returns on the bonds. If there is an expectation that the markets are going to correct, or should I say the economy is going to struggle based on these tariffs, because we have not had the full impact of tariffs. Trump's already put out a tariff, and then he says, right, the tariffs that have been put into play from the 5th of April, we're going to reimburse you the money back. How are we going to know what the tariff story is? All you're trading right now is pure speculation. Oh, it could be a problem in the future, or it could be a problem next after this scenario comes into play. What you've got to try and say to yourself is, what assets are really demonstrating that investors have no idea where to go? Yields. This is going to help you understand if you should buy Bitcoin or not, right? Now, park the idea, just for a second, park the idea for a minute about what the idea of Bitcoin is. What I'm about to say, people are going to probably say, oh, you don't understand Bitcoin. It's not that I don't understand what Bitcoin is, but the idea of Bitcoin was great when it came out, and now Bitcoin follows the stock market. Where's the idea of Bitcoin? Bitcoin should be outperforming gold, but gold's outperforming Bitcoin. That tells you adoption's not there yet. Yeah, but Tino, it's accumulation. All right, cool. Bitcoin's volatile enough, all right? And it's a supply, right? It should have been gone. We should be talking about 180K Bitcoin, not it's going to go down to 65 and then come all the way back up. And we're stuck in these dead-end ranges. The yields. 3.92% on the 2-year, right? The 10-year is at 4.4%, itching close to that critical 5%, which will be a fire sale, in my opinion, on the US bonds, okay? What would lead these to go up? Uncertainty, announcements from Trump about tariffs, China retaliations, tariff negotiations breaking down. And you notice that they all keep on saying that it's not a negotiation. It bloody is a negotiation. And that's not all of a sudden now Trump's like, yeah, we're having really good talks with everyone. Well, we're going to stop the war in Ukraine and Russia. The market welcomes it, okay? And the problem that we've got is because of Trump's inconsistency about making a decision, it's leaving the market on edge. Again, the yields, they're the first thing you need to be looking at when you are working out if you should buy or sell Bitcoin. Not going over to X, not even going over to YouTube, not even going anywhere else. You look at the yields and you can say, all right, I'm going to go over to the glass node. I'm going to pay attention to that. I'll have a look at the crypto market cap when it bloody decides to come up. I'm going to have a look at what's pumping and all of this stuff. The reason why it pumps is because there's money coming into the bigger market. So if the money's going into the bigger market, you're betting that it's going into the crypto market, okay? When you pay attention to the yields, you have a good idea of investor sentiment. If the yields are going up, that's bad news. Don't look at this one candle here. That's on the daily time frame. The yields are going up, okay? So if the yields are going up, overall, I have an expectation that the stock market is going to suffer from that. Forget it when NASDAQ shoots up aggressively and then comes back down again. Ignore that. What you've got to pay attention to is the yields themselves are going up. So investors are not doing what? They're not buying bonds. And if they're not buying bonds, it means that there is a possibility that the bonds are going to keep on going down until investors are met with the satisfaction of a rate that they can lock in on the 2-year and the 10-year bonds. Okay? So that's where we are. If the yields are going up, it's going to be a problem for Bitcoin in the future because investors won't be going into the stock market. Investors won't be buying up risk. Okay? If anything, they'll be selling the rallies. And because of the inconsistencies of the tariffs themselves, 1 minute it's good, the next minute it's bad. He gives and he takes. We're going to pause on electronics, but it doesn't mean we're getting rid of the tariffs. So investors now have to price that logic in. If there is an expectation that the interest rates are going to be cut, or maybe not, because they don't know exactly if they are going to cut the rates or not, your inflation's down, man. The market should be buzzing right now. And then that should warrant the idea that interest rates should be cut, but inflation is down and the Fed said no. And then the stock market dropped on inflation going down. So you already know that the market in principle is broken because it's not giving us what it should. Investors' reactions is not the same. All we've got right now is this wild move with the euro. We've got crazy movements on the yen. This is telling me that investors are just sticking to currency pairs because there's no point in holding dollars. And we know that they're not really risk on because if the dollar's gone down aggressively, buying stock is a waste of time because you're not even able to buy more stock. It's horrible for the fact that the dollar's gone down so aggressively. That only means that investors are doing what? I'll go over to the Eurozone and buy stock. I'll go and get some stocks from over there. I'll go to Japan and get some stocks. I'll go to China and get some stock because they're going to be pumping liquidity into the marketplace. So then you look at the NASDAQ and you say to yourself, hold on a second, why can't I buy this? Why can't I buy right now? Have you heard any of the big boys buying? If Warren Buffett's buying in Japan, and we always tend to know and find out when he's buying something, he's buying in Japan. That's because Japan's going to plan on increasing their interest rates. So it's a little bit more lucrative for investors. So what we've got transition. We've got what the market calls expansion, contraction. So they're going to take the money out of the US stock market. They're going to go into other emerging markets. They're going to be taking advantage of liquidity over there. And then when it's time, the market will then start to recover back up. How will we know when it's time? Well, we go to something like this. In front of you, 779 stocks ended up closing positive on the Friday. Down on volume was 104 stocks. Breaking out was 2. So after that little movement to the upside on the NASDAQ, only 2 stocks were able to break out. Now it says here there's 13 stocks that are near a pivot. So that could mean that if we've got some household names of stocks inside of this list, that tells us that we've got the big boys getting ready to load up. So let's just go and have a look. What are the names of the stocks right now? So I'm going to click each one. Casella Waste, can't even say it. So that tells me it's not really a company that we really need to know much about. What's it got? Daily average volume, 462,000. Pollution control, not interested. Kellanova, what's this? 2.82 million food package company. Okay, cool. Looks like they're breaking out, but it's not really a company that I'm going to be paying attention to in sense of household names, like the Magnificent Seven. Okay, cool. Sprott, what's Sprott about? Here we go. Finance Investment Management, Canadian-based company, operates through subsidiaries as an asset management holding company. So they've effectively broken out, and their average daily volume is 144,000. That's dead. It's too light. It's very volatile, and it's very lightly traded. So that's nothing for me. Got pharmaceutical companies. Of course, pharmaceutical companies are going to get feel the pain of Trump and the tariffs. $68 a share, average volume 338,000. Dead, no good for me. ICC Bank, whatever it is. Here we go. Daily volume 4.9 million. Foreign banks, private sector commercial bank with a network of 6,523 branches, and its counters and centers across India. Okay, so is that a major bank that we know about? No, we don't know. If Goldman Sachs is not there, it's looking at the list right here. We don't really have anything. Look at the price. It's the nothing. Really, really black. I mean, you've got the United Health Group right here, and everyone knows United Health Group. That's only one of the big players, but it's medical. And what happens in medical? Well, they always go to medical stocks because whether there's an economy crash or anything like that, they always go to healthcare, medical, and defense-based. So the list itself in front of you, there's nothing wrong in you guys checking this out. But the list itself, has it got any household names? No. Where's Nvidia? Where's Google? Where's Microsoft? Where's GameStop? Where's Apple? No one's there. So then that gives me a reason to believe that the market itself is still not ready to continue back up. Because if you haven't got the big boys getting money, then why would you be of the belief that the market's going to keep on climbing? Forget this little move here, okay? For us to agree with the idea that the market is going to continue higher, we need to break this last point that we broke away from. We need to reclaim the 20,500 region. We just have to claim that. And if we can't claim that point, then anything that we see going up is just going to be an opportunity for them to sell the rallies to bring it back down again. And that's the logic that I've got. And if I keep seeing the yields going up, that's going to be a problem for me to believe that the markets are going to turn. But Patino, Bitcoin, don't understand, man. Bitcoin is the future of money, and it's going to do this. Yeah, all right, cool. But when you've got heavyweights like this that is filled with mom and dad investors and institutional fund managers that rinse the life out of Bitcoin when they short it on the futures and they buy it on spot over here for their DCA and what have you, it just makes you question or not whether realistically is this the move. You know, everyone's claiming that the low is in, but guys, we've not had any impact from the tariffs yet. They're already talking about economic recessions, already talking about interest rates higher for longer. You got Larry Fink turning around saying that the interest rates might have to be increased in the future if inflation still persists. Like, that's my logic. And if you don't like the sound of that, I'm just basing it off what I'm seeing here. You've got the Bank of Japan with their interest rate story. If they increase it, then we're pretty much in the dustbin. There's going to be market reaction to that. If the tariffs are going to start getting nasty again and China then starts to turn around and say that they're going to add more tariffs, I'm telling you, sanctions are next. All right? Sanctions are next. Where's the phone call? Where's the conversation? Where's the meetup? When are they going to sit down and discuss things? When Trump says that China's tariffs are a joke, that doesn't warrant the idea of having a conversation with Xi Jinping, does it? No. And that's why it's hard for investors to navigate where they should put money, which means that if the 10-year and the 2-year end up going up even more and they keep on going up, it tells you investors, I'm not even interested in buying the US bonds yet because they're concerned about the risk. Remember, Bessent's increased the debt ceiling for another 2 years. The US doesn't have to worry about its debt. That's undermining for foreign investors. That's why your bonds are down and the yields are up, because if they're going to get involved in the US debt, they want a better rate of return for doing so. If they can lock a 10-year at 5%, telling you now, it goes 5%, ladies and gentlemen, all the money's just going to plow into the bonds market. It really will, in my opinion anyway. Any questions, ladies and gentlemen? Here we go. Tino, what are the odds for Bitcoin? All right, let's go to BTC. Here we go. What are the odds for Bitcoin to hit 250K by the end of the week? Oh, God. I know you're not asking that question. Tina, in times of recession, if I were to get into one, what kind of stocks perform the best? Commodities, consumer staples, or cattle? Defense. Defense-based stocks, okay, and biomedical. They always, historically, they do well. Problem is right now is gold, in principle, has already performed really well. And even though they are expecting gold to continue higher, right, there will be retraces in gold in the future where they're going to be hedging for the next event. I'm telling you, you start seeing these vectors again, get involved in gold and buy it. Why? Because they're just going to keep on going up. They really will. That's the story with gold, because they're not consistent. When gold starts to drop, okay? When gold starts to drop, investors are coming out of safe havens and now they're going to be looking for risk elsewhere. If the bond market starts to go up and gold's prices go down again, then that tells you investors are coming into the marketplace. They're trying to come out of the idea of risk now in terms of the hedge, okay? So then what happens is gold's prices go down, the stock market goes up, everything goes crazy. And if you do pay attention to the gold ETF. Have a look at that. Always watch gold ETFs, all right? If you start seeing them selling their gold ETF, you're going to have the expectation that gold's price is going to come back down again. Investors are now no longer concerned about things, so they're offloading their risk, offloading their positions out of gold to start seeking risk elsewhere. All right? So that's something you got to take into consideration, ladies and gentlemen. Tina, when will they start printing money again? They should bring Bitcoin. That should bring Bitcoin's price back up again. Yes, it's true that does bring Bitcoin's price back up. Yeah, if they start printing money again, but it doesn't look like they're going to be printing it anytime soon. The yields, they keep going up. If the yields are still going up, that means the interest rate's going to be higher again. That means there's going to be a problem with inflation. So they're really going to not want to increase or print more money because they're just going to increase their inflation again. And then we get interest rate increases again. And then we are in the dustbin. That's where we are. Thoughts on global liquidity and Bitcoin since January 2024, offset by 80 days, and it appears Bitcoin is ready for that move up. Yeah, you make that assumption that it's ready to start making a move to the upside based on global liquidity. But the problem that we've got with those metrics is there's, in my opinion, right? Look at this chart over here. Just to show you and put it into perspective for you. The reverse repurchase agreements, to simplify the understanding of this chart, because the market pumps liquidity, the government pumps liquidity in to prevent short-term interest rates from going up and down and what have you. The logic says that when this goes up, Bitcoin's price technically goes down, okay? So if I just add Bitcoin's price to this chart, just to help you understand it, just go BTC, just type Bitcoin. All right, so you add that to the chart, you can see that when this is peaking out, when it's going up, okay, Bitcoin's price goes down. So as this was going up the blue line, Bitcoin topped out and then it started to go down, okay? This peaks out and then it starts to go down, Bitcoin's price goes up. So logic says that this is starting to go up right now. So we look at it, we can see it's starting to show a little bit of interest, okay? What does that tell you? Well, it tells you that that's a problem, because that means Bitcoin's going to start coming down if this starts to go back up. Okay, just to simplify it, right? Are we there yet? Like, has Bitcoin corrected enough? Is Bitcoin deemed at a discount right now? But then when you say Bitcoin should go to a 250,000, it doesn't matter then. Anything below 100K is still deemed as a discount, you know? But it's whether you decide to take that risk. That's my opinion. Here's a good time to buy Tether with a strong euro, so you're getting more of it. Fundamentally, yeah, in principle, you would be able to earn more USDT off the back of it, you know, with a strong euro. That makes sense. So you can play that game, okay? It's just then looking at USDT, I mean, looking at it, it's on a trajectory to come down to very psychological levels, right? Important levels. This 5.1%, this 5.04% is important right now. And I think that USDT could actually go down to that, which would then naturally send Bitcoin up. But we've got to wait to see what the tariffs are going to say. That's the problem we've got. We've got inconsistency with the tariffs. And that's why it's a difficult marketplace for people to start moving money and putting it in places for the long term. Okay. Bitcoin, Tino, Bitcoin can drop realistically. It could, in theory, go to zero like everything else. But the fact that the levels around 70, 74K is strong and everyone will buy more around those numbers, it won't drop more. Wrong. Why? Because they will always be buying Bitcoin. Nothing to do with 70 and 74. Quite frankly, 70, 74 is one of the important levels. Why? Because this is where they spent the longest time consolidating around the all-time high. This logically says that this is where you expect Bitcoin to actually find support. Have we gone into that range yet? No. So if you're going to get a discount on Bitcoin and test by technical analysis, it needs to go into that range. Are we in environments that could send Bitcoin lower? Yeah. But you want a cheaper Bitcoin, don't you? Your dollar right now says that you should be buying Bitcoin. You really should. But is the yield good enough on Bitcoin? And I'm talking from the normal investor. Technically, his dollars right now are terrible. And if he exchanges his dollars over into Bitcoin, especially at these levels where the dollar sits, that could be a problem for Bitcoin, because then the dollar starts to shoot back up. We've got ourselves a little bit of a problem. Yeah? Anything else? NVIDIA announced they're going to make American supercomputers in the US for the first time. Texas production will ramp up 12 to 15 months, apparently. Would this lead to lower margins? What, for NVIDIA? Lower margins? Nah, man, that's going to be, all right, they'll make investments naturally, but let me just put it into perspective, right? Let's just have a look at NVIDIA's statistics right now, all right? Come on, NVIDIA, here we go. Right, NVIDIA. Come on. There he is. Right. Cool. So, statistically speaking, NVIDIA is a stellar stock, has awesome fundamentals, right? Now, with these awesome fundamentals comes the risk of how long are they going to sustain them for? Well, when you've got an average daily volume of 301 million, yeah, you've got yourself a beastie stock right there. Everyone's got an opinion on it. $2.7 trillion market cap. It's gone down from 3.5. So, yeah, it's losing a little bit of money. However, look at this. 8,510 funds own this, okay? Now, the fund ownership tells you that each fund owner has a different perspective on what they think this stock is about, whether it's a value-based, whether it's momentum, speculative, and what have you. But you've got many funds holding this, okay? So if you start seeing NVIDIA's price going up, then you can assume that everyone else is feeling like it's going to be going up. There's massive support from it. But going back to your discussion, just look at their debt. It's 11%. Maybe the reason why NVIDIA is still holding out so well and it's not as subject to the changes in interest rates is because it doesn't hold enough debt for it to be a problem. Okay? Most tech companies borrow money. NVIDIA's only got a small amount of debt, a very small amount of debt relative to what it does. But it's got monopoly. It runs the show. So whatever liquidity they spend to improve production in the future, it's only going to improve the share price, in my opinion. And its earnings per share prospectus, it's like, if you look at it, these guys, they're killing it. 2027, they're going to be earning $5.72 on each share you hold. It's wild for a tech stock. It's really good for a tech stock. Okay. All right, then. Anything else, guys? Here we go. Tina, why is the Tesla pattern or the inverse head and shoulders pattern so strong in crypto? I always see this pattern working out. What's the logic? The Tesla pattern. What, as in what happens in Tesla happens in Bitcoin? Is that what you're saying? Tina, what stock is better, NVIDIA or TSM? Both. You want both, because they're both in the same environment. But fundamentally, NVIDIA is the better stock. Fundamentally. When am I going to shave the beard? I ain't shaving this beard, bro. I do not want to look like a virgin. I really don't. Shorts rarely win. This is true. Markets go up and over time, not down. That's true. Anything else? Right. I hope you didn't short NASDAQ early. I've not got no risk on right now because, I mean, look at that. It's hit that wall. It's unbelievable. It's done really well to break that range. But this is just a little bit of a pullback. Remember, we got Trump speaking in a bit, so they have been up all morning, so that's going to be interesting. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting day. We have got a gap down here, so we've got to take that into consideration. But it should be a good day overall, I think. Tina, this is natural course of Bitcoin. You can see the weekly, monthly has to have a huge drop before the bullish candles. Peak of the bull run is October. November makes sense. 250, 400K. Look, man, it's okay. Yeah. Okay, cool. I mean, whatever Bitcoin needs to do, it's going to do it. All right. But you've got to follow the big money, ladies and gentlemen. That's the truth right there. You've got to follow the money all day, every day. Nice rising wedge. Anything else? Trump talking equals dump. He's not talking yet, is he? No, surely not. Wait there. No. See, we've just had the news about NVIDIA to manufacture the AI supercomputers in the US. That's good news for the US. It's brilliant. So this move down could be the move that sends everything back up. They always do it. 4-year cycle is dead. Yeah, good news reactions are terrible. They really are. Look, we had inflation coming in lower and the market did nothing. You know, it did nothing. So that's the thing. Quick update, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. If you haven't done so already, BTCC is doing isolate now. They've got isolate and cross. So you can trade that on BTCC. And if you haven't done so, I think you should use this platform purely because of its hedging ability. What do I mean? You can trade the NASDAQ and the S&P, right? You can trade gold. You can trade MicroStrategy. You can trade silver. You can trade all the stocks that we talk about, right? And you can trade Forex at the same time. So hypothetically, if you were just trading crypto and Bitcoin goes sideways, you could have run longs on euro, okay? You could have exploited that. You could be exploiting NVIDIA. You could exploit the NASDAQ and the S&P. You can really play that story that I talk about every single day about the bonds and the yields and hedging. You can really do that all on this one platform. So if you do decide to check these guys out, get a 10% bonus that is released every Wednesday, and you don't need a VPN or a KYC to join BTCC. So that's in the description, everybody, for you to check out. Okay, cool. With that being said, the market's taken a nice little reversal to the downside. That's happy days. It means it's cheaper in the morning and it will be expensive by the evening. That's the logic. But with that being said, what's your prediction for ETH over the next 2 months? Is it over for altcoins? Look, man, just follow what Bitcoin's doing, okay? It's especially with this hype behind Mantra, people are going to be getting a little bit concerned with altcoins. So they're probably going to be offloading on certain projects. But until we know exactly what that story is, I haven't dived in too deeply about Mantra, but just be careful with your bags, ladies and gentlemen. The markets are hard enough as it is, okay? So just, in my opinion, scalp if you're a trader, and as a spot trader or as a holder of Bitcoin, you really want to buy Bitcoin when it slumps. You want to be selling it as it rises. Not the guys that are like, I'm out for the coin and, you know, to the moon and I'm holding on forever and forever. Bitcoin's price doesn't matter to you if you are just about accumulation. That's the truth. Okay? Cool. Damn, long stream. Mad love and respect, guys. Hit the like button on the way out and I'll be tuning into you all later on tonight. Peace. It's too long.